Where is Stika buried?
Who?
Stika?
Oh, he's buried right here.
Stika.
I know, no, but
Oh, yeah, I
you said
found it.
You knew where it was.
It's
Yeah.
down the main aisle
Where the
to the
barge is?
left. Not quite as far as that, in the middle,
It's,
to the left.
Okay.
Yeah,
Honor
it's a very
section.
modern,
The honor section.
Honor section.
a
Yeah.
modern, tall, it's beautiful, simple. It's a very rectangular with a cut at the top, and it's tall marble. It's beautiful.
Because how long ago did he die?
In the 50s. He's the first person that was buried there.
I know, yes,
But
I
not-
heard you say
Yes,
that.
yes.
But not straight away after he died, only a couple years later.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was
Okay.
moved here.
It took a while to build the road.
Yes.
Get the permits.
And get the permits, yeah, that's right.
These are the shoes.
That's
Those
his
are the
shoes.
shoes, yes, those are the shoes.
Now, who was the cobbler?
Right here,
I
this
don't know,
guy
but-
here.
Oh,
There he is. That's amazing.
So we will be here and talking to people, yeah?
Yes,
Oh,
over
sure.
here.
Can you move
Can you move over
to the
there?
audience?
yes.
Yes, yeah. I'll help you.
Point.
Right over there, yeah. Oh, I have to put my glasses on. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna stand over here.
Is it on or shall I?
Is it on?
I think it is on.
Yeah? Oh,
Hello. Good evening. Yes,
Another question.
of course.
If I change my reservations and leave on Tuesday, would I be able to come to the shrine and talk to her? Is she working Monday?
I think so, but you know, I don't oversee her every day, so I cannot promise you
But I
anything.
know where I know where her office is.
Yes,
It's right in
yes.
the front of the, when you
Yeah.
come into the gift shop.
Yes,
On the left-hand
yes.
side.
So you can come Monday, but as I said, you know, we have to go through the records, so I cannot promise you Monday or Tuesday, but for sure I will call you, okay?
But I'm
And
trying to
then-
just decide if I should,
It's better,
Tuesday instead of Monday.
you know, it's still a short time. We have quite a lot of different memorials here. Sorry,
Okay.
yeah?
And then I'm just gonna give you a thumbs up.
now how do you know that mine's working?
It's working.
Oh, it is, okay.
If it's
Working.
working, then we'll, like, they're already set. So
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
So we're gonna be, so just make
I'll
sure you're
look
talking
there.
to this guy.
Yes, okay. Okay. I'm nervous.
So I will start.
What's that?
So I will start.
Okay.
Not to-
We're about to start, so we're also
We'll be online. Hello and good evening. Good evening to all our audience here present this evening for the Night in a Museum here in the exhibition at Our Lady of Czestochowa Shrine, exhibition dedicated to John Paul II, as we celebrate the week of the legacy of John Paul II. And of course, we welcome all those who are with us because of live streaming and because of this new technology, which is present here in the shrine and in the life of every one of us. Of course, we cannot now forget about it, but we use that to help to reach to as many people as possible, to reach to you, our friends, our all those for whom the Shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa is very important. Thank you very much for being with us. And today there is with us Janet, who will give us a little talk about this place and about the life of John Paul II and how it is important that we keep all this memory and artifacts of him here at the Shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa.
Thank you, Father Tad. And I want to thank Father Timothy and also the friends at the Ambassador Fund for the Catholic education who made this week possible through their generous grant. And I also want to thank the technical team who helps us with the audio and visual. So we're standing in the beautiful room devoted to Pope St. John Paul II, and tonight we're going to discuss his papacy and his legacy. So I'd like to take you back to 1978. It was the year of the 3 popes, which has only happened 13 times in the Catholic Church, and it happened most recently in 1605. In 1276, though, there were 4 popes in 1 year. So what happened in 1978 is Paul VI had served 15 years, and he passed away in August of 78. Then Pope John Paul I was elected, but he died in his sleep only 33 days after becoming pope. Then John Paul II was elected, and because of all the upsetment, he took the name John Paul II to honor his predecessor. So John Paul II was the 3rd longest serving pontiff and Bishop of Rome, Italy. The first was St. Peter the Apostle. He served 38 years, and then Pope Pius IX, 32 years, and then John Paul II, 27 years. He was the first non-Italian pope in 400 years. His basic ministry centered around 3 missions, and he didn't deviate from those 3 missions his entire 27 years. First, he wanted to use his influence for political change. Second, he advocated for human rights, balancing man's spiritual rights and man's material needs. He felt he needed to follow in Christ's teaching to go out into the world to spread the word. And this led him to travel overseas 104 times, embracing many cultures in 120 nations on 5 continents. He traveled 146 times within Italy itself, and his travels to countries throughout the world are documented on this beautiful collection we have of a stamp and a picture of each of the places he visited. Visitors come in to find the country that they're from because a lot of people were in the audience when he spoke to them. Only 4 countries would not let him visit, and it's easy to guess 3 of them: China, Russia, North Korea, and Vietnam. Vietnam was the surprise for me. He was the most seen person in human history. He received 1,000 heads of state over his papacy. He established diplomatic relations with 64 countries, trying to create peace throughout the world. He traveled to Philadelphia in 1979, and more than 1 million people attended the event. We actually have a ticket from that event in the case over here. He visited Manila in the Philippines and spoke to one of the largest crowds, over 5 million people. Some say 7 million people. And a couple came in to find their postcard, and they were actually in the audience. In his speeches, he would tell people, "Do not be afraid." And he lived those words when he conversed with totalitarian leaders, condemning their assaults on the dignity of the human person. In December of '78, he sent a representative to mediate the Beagle Channel conflict between Chile and Argentina. This was a territorial dispute over 4 islands between the 2 nations, and they were ready to go to war over these 4 islands. With the help of the Vatican, it was eventually resolved without bloodshed, and this is one of the first times he was able to accomplish a settlement of a big issue in the world without bloodshed. In 1984, since 1984, the islands have been recognized as a territory of Chile. He's credited with encouraging and personally voicing opposition to the policies and dictators, including Fidel Castro of Cuba, Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines, and Augusto Pinochet of Chile. And he even penned a letter to the president of the Soviet Union, Brezhnev, warning him not to invade Poland. When the Vatican announced that the Pope would travel to his home country of Poland in '79, the Kremlin told the Polish people not to go see him, but millions of people showed up in defiance. It was during this visit that the Kremlin realized that the Pope was a direct threat to the domination and control of Poland. Poland was the only nation in the Soviet bloc to survive the years of oppression and persecution of the Catholic religion due to the bravery and leadership of Wyszynski, his friend. We have the famous picture here of the Pope as a cardinal and Wyszynski as well. I'd like to talk about the year 1981 next. This was a pivotal year. There are interesting parallels that are not talked about very often. Those parallels are between President Reagan and Pope St. John Paul II. On March 30th, 1981, Reagan was shot, and the bullet just missed his heart by a hair. A few months later, in May, on the 13th in 1981, Pope St. John Paul II was shot, and the bullet missed his abdominal artery, but the 5.5-hour operation saved his life, despite the doctors thinking he would pass away. They removed 1.5 feet of his intestines, and his kidneys and liver were infected and badly damaged. Both men were actors earlier in their lives. Both forgave their shooters immediately. And it's interesting that both died within a year of each other. Reagan died in June of 2004, and Pope St. John Paul died in April of 2005. Now, another important player in the history of Poland was Lech Walesa. He was the founder of Solidarity, the Polish trade union. He represented 10 million Polish workers in a nation of 36 million. So most of the working population belonged to the labor union. This was in defiance of Communist Party rules. They did not allow unions. On Sunday, December 13th, 1981, the military general Jaruzelski, him,
very difficult Polish name.
he took over the nation and declared martial law, announcing it over radio and television. Here's what happened starting at midnight. Tanks appeared in the street. Arrests began. Lech Walesa was arrested and taken to a secret location. The Solidarity Union leaders, dissidents, and university intellectuals were arrested and taken to internment camps. Phone lines were cut, and the phone lines that were not cut were monitored all the time. Upwards of 10,000 citizens were held without trial. The word solidarity was forbidden, and posters were removed from the streets. Checkpoints were set up that night, and meetings and publications were banned from then on. In 4 of the 5 provinces, military personnel replaced the governors. All citizens were issued ID cards and had to carry them at all times. And the entire country was placed under curfew. The curfew lasted from December 13th, 1981 through July 22nd, 1983. From that point on, President Reagan and the Pope exchanged correspondence via letters and telecommunications, meetings, secret communications, most of which are still classified and remain redacted. The President and the Pope agreed that forceful action was required. They had to seize the moment, and that's what President Reagan said. It was the moment of a lifetime. They wanted to save Poland. Their advisors disagreed with them, though. And the president, representing the political plane, and the Pope, representing the moral plane, were in agreement with the objective to liberate Poland. They moved forward despite the objections of their advisors. So, in a symbolic moment, the president lit a single candle and placed it in the window of the Oval Office, and millions of Americans did the same thing. Cardinal John Kroll of Philadelphia was a loyal supporter of President Reagan and frequently briefed the president and the National Security Council over the years leading up to 1989. He gave the invocation at the Republican National Convention in Dallas in 1984. In that same year, President Ronald Reagan and Cardinal Kroll visited the shrine for a campaign rally. On Christmas Eve, Pope St. John Paul lit a single candle as well to support the Solidarity movement and placed it on the windowsill overlooking St. Peter's Square. During the intervening years up to 1989, Radio Free Europe and Voice of America continued to broadcast religious programming behind the Iron Curtain. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev was elected president of the Soviet Union. He was a supporter of a more open Soviet Union and considered restructure or perestroika for the Soviet Union. Gradually, the general lifted restrictions in Poland, and prisoners were released, and citizens could move about the country freely. Organizations were reinstated. Gorbachev and Pope St. Paul developed a relationship that eventually included Lech Walesa and President Reagan. And on January 18th, 1989, Solidarity was legalized. On June 4th, 1989, free elections were held, and the Solidarity Union won in a landslide. The first thing Lech Walesa did was go to Rome to thank the Pope. So in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell as a result of the collaboration of these four great individuals: Pope St. John Paul II, USA President Ronald Reagan, and Soviet Union Mikhail Gorbachev, and Polish President Lech Walesa. Lech Walesa was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in '83, and they all contributed to the fall of communism and saved Poland and Eastern Europe without bloodshed. So why did the Pope do so much in the global arena? So I want to talk about the Pope's background. He overcame great hardship when he was young. His mother was only 45 years old when she and his sister died in childbirth. He was only 9 years old at the time. Then when he was 12, his brother Edmund, who was a doctor, caught scarlet fever from the patients in the hospital where he worked. His father died of a heart attack in 1941. So by the time he was 21, he had lost his entire family. So the story is, when his father passed away, he was with him when he died, and he stayed with the body all night long, and that's when he heard the call to the priesthood. So the Pope was driven to support political change as a direct result of his experiences in his youth under the Nazi occupation during World War II and the communist occupation after the war. In 1939, on September 1st, when the Nazis invaded Poland, the outbreak of World War II interrupted his studies of Polish literature at the university in Krakow. Copernicus, which we have a picture here at the museum, he studied at the same university. He was a famous astronomer, a mathematician, and Renaissance man, as well as a Catholic priest who discovered that the Earth and planets revolve around the sun. In September of '40, he took a job at the Solvay Chemical Works in the stone quarry because Poland was insisting that you had a job, so he didn't want to be deported to Germany, and he worked there for 4 years. This job formed his beliefs about the working man, and he eventually wrote 3 encyclicals on that subject. During that time, he was also studying, and his friends in the quarry would cover for him so he could study. In the fall of 1942, he decided to enter the seminary, and at the time, the seminary and the university were both operating underground. So he stayed at the Archbishop's home until he graduated with a PhD in theology, and he was ordained a priest in 1946. He did continue his education thereafter and throughout his lifetime. Another example of his mission to go out into the world is in 1984, he called the young people together to gather in Rome, and he was worried that no one would show up. But 300,000 young adults went, and so that started World Youth Day, and that continues till this day, and it's every 3 years in a different nation. We have several banners over here for past World Youth Days. From the very first, his from the very first time he was a priest and he had a parish, he felt very comfortable with young people, and he really preferred to be around them. He would take the parishioners, who were mostly workers and students, out into the woods for hikes and camping. And we have pictures over here of him outdoors, shaving, and in a kayak.
Kayak, yes.
Yeah. So he was a very outdoorsman. But he went outdoors with the parishioners, and when he was there, they called him uncle, not father, to protect him from arrest. They were still under the communist rule. They would celebrate Mass in the woods, and he would turn the kayaks upside down to have the altar, or they would spread logs so he would have someplace to place the chalice. And we have photos on the wall. So I want to quote him, because this quote expresses his deep love for and deep optimism for the youth of the world. And he said, "Although I have lived through much darkness under harsh totalitarian regimes, I have seen enough evidence to be unshakably convinced that no difficulty, no fear is so great that it can completely suffocate the hope that springs eternal in the hearts of the young." And so he maintained that feeling his entire life. He also felt it very important to bring people together, especially the religions. And he continued his mission by committing to building alliances between religions. He wanted to break down barriers. So in 1986, he invited the leaders of many religions to Assisi, Italy, to just talk. They included Jews and Buddhists, Shintoists, Baptists, Lutherans, Mennonites, Orthodox Christians, and Mormons. In '86, he visited a synagogue, and we have, I want to tell you that in '93, he established relations with Israel, and during the pilgrimage, he went to the Wailing Wall and placed a note on the wall. And we have a statue here, right here, about that. That's very, very nice. So also, he visited the Islamic mosque in Damascus. And in November of '92, he spoke with members of the plenary assembly of the Pontificate, these words are hard, Pontificate Council for Interreligious Dialogue. So I want to quote him again. "I express my gratitude to you, to all your council's generous sharing in my apostolic," again a difficult word, "service of the church throughout the world. Your work contributes to the fulfillment of what I have always considered to be a very important part of my ministry, the fostering of more friendly relations with the followers of other religious traditions." During his lifetime, he fostered communication throughout nations and peoples. He established diplomatic relations with 64 countries to foster peace throughout the world. During his papacy, more people were appointed saints and blessed than any other time in history, a total of 1,338. He developed a deep friendship with Mother Teresa, and he asked her to go where he could not. She became a saint in 6 years, where typically it takes 40. He published poems and acted in plays as a young adult. He had an incredible memory and knew all of the parts, and he developed an interest in languages. And during the Nazi occupation, he and other students formed the Polish Rhapsody Theater to keep Polish values and culture alive. He wrote 5 books, 14 encyclicals, 3 of which were on the subject of workers. Then on May 13th, 1981, the feast of Our Lady of Fatima, the Turkish terrorist Agasha shot Pope St. John Paul at point-blank range in St. Peter's Square. During the 5-hour operation to save his life, he lost 1.5 foot of his intestines, and his liver and kidneys were badly damaged. During his recovery, he said, it's a very famous statement, "A terrorist's hand pulled the trigger, but the maternal hand deflected the bullet." This was the 3rd secret of Fatima, the bishop in white, that saved the Pope. When he recovered, he went to see the terrorist to forgive him. After serving a long sentence in Italy, the terrorist was deported back home to Turkey, and he converted to Catholicism on May 13, 2007, the 27th anniversary of the attempted assassination and the Feast of Our Lady of Fatima. Up until that time, the Pope was a strong, athletic, well-built man of 5'10", 175 pounds, but the shooting and the complications from the surgery lasted his entire life. Behind me, you can get a feel for his size, and these vestments were worn by him during the last Mass, this here during the last Mass, and this is his Cossack skull cap and shoes. On Wednesdays, he had audiences that were broadcast throughout the world through video, radio, internet, satellite. He was very up to date with everything. He would invite people for lunch and dinner and converse with them in their native language to make them feel more comfortable. He knew English, Spanish, Polish, Italian, French, German, and Portuguese. In his homeland, he and Cardinal Wojcinski were close friends. Cardinal Wojcinski is credited with keeping Catholicism alive during the communist occupation by operating the church underground. He's a Polish national hero and a saint because he was credited with saving Polish Christianity during the communist rule. He actually was imprisoned under house arrest for 3 years. The Pope considered him his mentor. So finally, I want to talk about that many consider him a Renaissance man or a learned man who pursues truth and education in different disciplines, regardless of the consequences. He's in good company. Besides Copernicus, he is joined by Da Vinci, Galileo, Newton, Franklin, Jefferson, Madame Curie. He was a pope, an actor, a linguist, a playwright, a prolific writer, and over 70,000 pages of documents are attributed to him. He was a traveler and a great communicator. He was a priest that celebrated all of the sacraments throughout his entire papacy. He met with experts of every field of study to keep up with the latest developments. When he passed away, all the things that he did over his lifetime resulted in many leaders of many nations and all the religions went to Rome in person. In the past, when a pope had died, the Vatican would be open for a few hours each day so that people could pass by his casket and pay their respects. But 5 million people showed up, and so the people wanted to see him, so the basilica had to remain open for 22 hours a day for 6 days. Only 2 hours reserved to clean the basilica. He was an inspiration to people around the globe then and today. He inspired hope and trampled fear. So I would invite everyone to visit our gallery and the Polish gallery that we have behind us. We're located between the chapel and the candle chapel, and we're open Sundays from 10:30 to 2. And if you would like to volunteer, call the Shrine office.
Wow, Janet, such a great.
Thank you. Thank you.
What a great lecture and so much detail. And somebody can ask a question, why here, the Shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa, his person is so important and we keep so many artifacts about his life. It is because of all that what we just heard from Janet, but also because this building which we are in at the moment, it was built by Polish Americans as a thanksgiving for 1,000 years of Christianity in Poland, which we celebrated in 1966. So that building was opened in 1966. And John Paul II, the Great, was the greatest man of our nation. That's why we really keep this memory of him here. But not only that. We keep this memory of him here because he supported this shrine, this place. He visited twice this place. The first one, it was in 1969, and we have up there by the wall a very nice exhibit of the pictures from his visit here, from his pilgrimage to our shrine in American Czestochowa. And then the second time he visited this place in 1976 when he came to Philadelphia to International Eucharistic Congress. And up there we have these pictures in front of the church and then in our monastery from his visit to the shrine. So he was the greatest man of our nation, but he was also a big supporter of this shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa. He said these words: there would be no Pope John Paul II if not Jasna Góra, which is Our Lady of Czestochowa shrine in Poland. So he had this beautiful devotion to Our Lady, but not only devotion. He visited that place, the first one, a sign of his visit to the shrine in Poland was from the Second World War, when he went there as a student, and he signed in our archives in a book his name, so we know about that he was there. But apart from just having devotion or visiting the shrine, his life was dedicated to our Blessed Mother. And through his life, as we heard so much, he imitated the life of Blessed Mary, Our Lady of Czestochowa. So that's why he is so great person of our nation. He's so great person of the nation of the world, we can say. And that's why here at the shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa we keep the memory of himself being here present. And of course, apart from what we just pointed out, we have this shelf where there is all the work of his papacy. As we just heard, he wrote so many books. He wrote 14 encyclicals, he wrote 14 apostolic exhortations, he wrote 11 apostolic constitutions, he wrote 45 apostolic letters, he wrote 31 motu proprios. So all that work, great work, I cannot imagine, with all that pilgrimages, all that visits all over the world, when he could do all that work. But we have it here, so we have like a proof of that here. And you are very welcome to come and see all that. We also have these albums of his papacy. Each album has each year of his papacy, his being a pope. There are a lot of pictures from different years, visits, celebrations, and so on. So, as you can see, there is this big richness of artifacts which we keep here at the shrine. And he's one of many men of our nation who left us this legacy. As you just mentioned before, this part of our exhibition is part of the bigger exhibition of the arts of Polish artists, which we can see also in our shrine. And among them there is two generations, three stykas, Jan, Tadeusz and Adam, who painted these pictures, and they were given to our shrine, so people who visit this place, this shrine, can see them. One of them was buried here at the shrine cemetery, the first one buried in our shrine cemetery, that was Adam Styka. So, as you can hear, we have so much to see at this exhibition hall. As you said, Janet, you are very welcome to come and see all that. Every Sunday between 10:30 and 2 o'clock it's open. Always there are volunteers who
Yes.
welcome all the visitors. And if you want to be a volunteer, you are very welcome to help us to present that heritage to all the pilgrims of our shrine. So we have so nice audience. Maybe you have some questions to us. Of course, I can promise that we won't answer all the questions, but maybe some.
I just have a statement. I actually attended the Eucharistic Congress in Philadelphia in '79, wasn't it? When he wasn't
76.
A pope. He wasn't a pope yet.
Yes, yes.
And I got a tape on a cassette, and I'm having it converted to digital of him talking during the conference.
Yeah,
Nice.
beautiful. We have his homily,
Do you have it
taped
recorded?
the homily which he said when he was here in 1976.
No, but you
So
don't have the recording of.
not the recording, but taped. Written his words
So you have
during
the
his
written from
homily.
Philadelphia.
Not from the Philadelphia, from here, from the mass here at the shrine.
Oh, when he was here, right.
Yes.
And I also went to the original shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa in Poland also.
For me, being a Polish, it's like the task. You have to be at Our Lady of Jasna, the shrine, original shrine in Poland. I remember my grandma, who was 85, 86 when she died, and she every year she would say, if only I could go for a pilgrimage to Jasna Góra, to this shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa. And I just grew up very close to that shrine, only about 50 miles. So I remember my first memories when I was probably 4 years old. It was from this shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa, there in Poland. Any more questions? Yes.
What is the very large hat?
Oh yeah, very large hat. Maybe you know that John Paul II was born in Wadowice. And Wadowice is south part of Poland, where there are mountains. People living in the mountains, mountaineers, they would wear hats like that. And they always would consider him as one of them, one of the mountaineers, even though Wadowice it was a town, a little city, not so much totally mountains, but very close to. So he was given by them, and we have quite a nice group of mountaineers from Poland, from southern part of Poland, who come to our shrine every year, especially for the feast day of St. Anne's on 26th of July, or close to that, on Sunday close to that feast day.
I've learned that the feathers are important. The feathers, if they're dark, that means the man that's wearing the hat is married. If they're white, that means he's single. So,
You
how about
see?
that? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Lots of... Good. Any more questions? Any comments yet? Just tell us, is it worth to come here for those who are watching us? Yes.
We saw the movie Carol, a Man Who Became Pope, and that's so, I guess, you just can't imagine someone going through all of that. But was there anything in the movie, I heard, I think Father Timothy said that some of it had been, was fictional. How much, was most everything in that movie accurate and true, or did they, add some things important?
I have to admit that I didn't watch this particular movie about him. I watched quite a few, but unfortunately I was away when there was this show of this movie here, so I didn't watch exactly. But, we have so many biographies of John Paul II, and it's really worth to see his life in the light of the history of our nation, Polish nation, because he's one of us living this history, living during the Second World War, living during the communism time, fighting for the freedom of our nation. So we cannot understand his papacy without understanding the history of our nation which he lived in. And Genedio mentioned about his effort which he did with different religions, working together with different religions. And he lived in a little city, little town, where there were so many Jewish people living with him. So he grew up in this environment. He had so many Jewish friends who he attended school with. So he just learned that because of living in this environment. So that's why we need to learn more about the Polish history to understand his life. Sorry, I didn't answer your question, but I tried. Anything else? Or is that enough to encourage all those who watch our live streaming to come and see by themselves?
I went to Rome twice, and the first time I sang with the choir, St. John the Baptist in Silver Spring, Maryland, and we sang for an audience of Pope John Paul II, and to see him walk into the room was like nothing else. It was like he radiated.
Yeah.
And we
was-
actually took a picture of us with him, with the choir.
Yes, through this research, he was a force of nature. He was someone that wanted to bring people together. He wasn't afraid. He wanted to speak with a strong voice for people that didn't have a voice.
Yes.
And so he was a hero to so many people throughout the world.
And advocate of so
An
many
advocate,
people.
that's a good
Yes,
word for that,
yes.
yes.
And I remember my last meeting with him very personally in 2003, which was just a couple years before he died, when we went together with our classmates to Rome, to Vatican, to celebrate our 5th anniversary of the ordination to the priesthood. And one of our classmates at that time studied in Rome. So we were privileged to see him face to face and to
Wow.
just to shake a hand with him. So the same, you could see how his face radiated. That was,
That's what I was saying.
yeah.
His face radiated.
yeah, that was amazing to see his face, to see how it was a holy man.
He and President Reagan both thought that they were put on the earth to do this one thing. And they both believed that to the deepest part of their souls. And I think that's true, and that would include Lech Walesa and Gorbachev. They saved Poland and Eastern Europe from the communists. They really did believe that. I'm going to read more about Reagan and his pursuit all those years in the 80s to bring down communism, to bring down the Iron Curtain.
That's actually the Christian belief that God has a plan for us, and whatever He gives us is for a purpose. The same was with the life of John Paul II. He was at that time at this place for a purpose. He had a mission to fulfill, and God gives mission to every one of us. We are not so well known as John Paul II, of course, but at the same time, God has the plans for every one of us, and we need to remember that. And the life of John Paul II reminds us about that. He had own mission to fulfill, but God gives every one of us own mission to fulfill as well. And we need to learn from him how to be open, not only open with the arms, like his arms were open so often, but our hearts would be open for the will of God to fulfill this plan which God gives us. And there is here, Wadowice, the place where he was born. You can see on stamps as well. So, Father Timothy, you are in charge of all that week of the legacy of John Paul II. Maybe you have some words of wisdom for us as well.
No more wisdom, but because there has been a lot that has been said here, but I just wanted to invite everyone to look around, to walk these halls, to see this first room where we have all the artifacts connected to St. John Paul II, and also to visit other rooms where we have Polish artists and other paintings and a lot of wonderful things. So I would like to thank Father Tad and Janet for this wonderful presentation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And of course, we are here to answer your questions if you have any. Not all of them, because we don't know everything, but
Yes.
a little bit from our experience. Please come and see different places.
Hi, Rob, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I thought I was away all week, and I'm like, the only thing I could do is Friday.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much.
So good. I can't wait to go
Yeah,
back
there
and
is
watch
another
those
part.
podcasts.
Please
I hope
come.
so. Yeah, I
See.
hope it came across all right.
Yeah,
It did?
Just so, it's-
Really?
I mean, so much research.
So good to
you
see
did.
you.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
hard to put it all into
Yeah.
a short period of time. Yeah, I think you did good.
Yeah. You think?
Yeah, it was great.
Yes, there are quite known artists.
You
in
did. I'm glad you
Poland,
asked that
like
question. It was
Wojciech
great.
Kossak.
I know. Thank you.
They were
Yes,
doing
you
a
are.
lot of
You're both
work
helpful. Thank you
connected to
so
the
much.
history of Poland,
Yeah, I
to
know.
the heroes of Poland,
I added the feather
battles
comment.
of Poland.
That was good. I didn't
Yeah.
hear that before.
Yeah, I know. I
fighting
just
for the
learned that.
freedom
I just
and
learned
so
that.
on.
I've got.
Whose hat was that then?
That's the Highlanders. They wear that hat, and so what they did was they gave it to him as a ceremonial
Although there is
symbol
this book,
of their love. That's not his hat. No, it's
which
his hat's like this.
shows
Yeah,
all
he's not
the
that big.
artwork of Styka family. You can get it in
Yeah, that's right.
gift shop.
Oh, that's good,
Yes,
guys.
yes.
Thanks.
But not all of that what is
Yeah.
here is in
Yeah,
book.
good.
In the book
Glad.
there are only the work of Styka. Here we have many more
I'm
like
gonna read
icons
about
and
that
so on.
more. There's more similarities. It's almost like they were put on earth.
General